The horrors of traditional education methods have been vividly captured in literature and film. The rigid disciplinarian teacher fails to inspire and engage Tom Sawyer, who then plots mischief. Prussian-style factory model of education doesn't sound right, and I was certainly not happy with the Soviet version of it in socialist Hungary. I love Fellini's take on schools in fascist Italy.
Alboino firmò la pace.
Dove si ritira Tiberio quando lascia la guida dello Stato?
Samen, fai attenzione alle lingue, deve battere qui contro il palato, così, e poi cacciala fuori. E
I understand and accept that so many great minds wanted to do something better in education. Rousseau, Pestalozzi, Dewey, Kilpatrick, Montessori, Freire. I get it. They wanted to help, and they came up with new ideas. We need to take a closer look at the father figure of pragmatism in education, John Dewey. His ideas started the progressive education movement in the US. And honestly, I don't find anything wrong with his main ideas. Number one, everything that the students learn should have utility. Pointless rote learning of facts is soul-crushing. The curriculum should include the students' interests, and Dewey identifies 4 of these areas. The kids love to talk, they love to construct things, they love to dig into things and investigate, and they love to express themselves creatively. Now, learning by doing works best. Meaningful, hands-on experiences come through project work. Agreed. Subjects should not be separated, but rather they should be integrated to achieve a holistic understanding of the curriculum content. Making connections is brilliant. I'm a fan of the TV show. In his writings, Dewey presented these ideas in a reasonable and balanced manner. He cared about the kids and their future. He was a great proponent of democracy, maybe a bit of a naive do-gooder. He could be savagely criticized for his Marxist social reconstructionist views, but I'm not going to do it. Dabbling in socialism is never a good idea, but at that time he didn't know better. He would be shocked to see how Western culture has changed and how new generations of education aficionados distorted his legacy, leading to the mess in public education that we have today. I'm not worshipping at the altar of capitalism. It's not perfect. However, the capitalist economy's success created wealth in societies. Millions were lifted from poverty, and we have money to throw around for social safety nets. Teachers, parents, and kids got more comfortable. This has consequences. When people feel safe and comfortable, they do not cling to each other for support. Social cohesion wanes. People don't seek the grace and goodwill of a provider, protector, God, since proud and confident human effort in science and technology seems to be a better bet. People get cocky and entitled. This has consequences too. The obsession with growth and moving forward creates pressures. We ought to learn from our mistakes and improve our game. True. Unfortunately, school boards learned to placate the parents by loudly advertising how proactive they are and how they come up with new and advanced program initiatives. Every year something new, a game changer. These school boards shift the paradigm good. This of course, has consequences. Education is a very complex enterprise. Wise and humble teachers with lots of experience may be able to suggest some tweaking here and there. Even I have some ideas. Careful field testing and good feedback from all participants could validate it. Little steps forward. But oh no, the anointed elite, the gurus and revolutionaries in education have a bolder vision. The old crumbling edifice is in the way of progress and has to be torn down to make way for a radically reimagined new system. Critical pedagogy extremists even advocate social deconstructionism. I don't need to say that all this has consequences. I started teaching in Canada in 1990, and I was in for a culture shock. I could not have a semi-intelligent conversation with my colleagues. They were mostly shallow younger women who didn't see their profession as a calling. They were voracious consumers who needed the paychecks to maintain their comfortable suburban lives. At in-services, the consultants tried to sell these dedicated quality employees on the latest and greatest initiative, which was invariably repackaged old stuff with new buzzwords. Nobody paid attention, but at the end of the afternoon session, the dream employees were fighting to get the lesson plan handout packages. They were conditioned to follow step-by-step instructions and cook from a recipe. The unit plans were forcing integration of the learning material from various subjects. It was ridiculous, and it didn't make sense to me, but it didn't bother my young colleagues who followed dictates mindlessly. In turn, this is what they expected from their students. Now, hands-on experiential learning or project work is supposed to be well-prepared, well-organized, and concluded by solidly established learning outcomes. In the hands of the not-so-dedicated teachers and the not-so-dedicated students, group work turned into a chaotic free-for-all, a colossal waste of time with minimal learning. Whether or not the individual students understood the concepts involved got less important, and the report cards were loaded with meaningless euphemisms. 30 years later, we're dealing with the consequences of the consequences of the consequences. None of Dewey's ideas were implemented the way he intended them. The kids are in a non-conceptual fog doing pointless fact-finding. Many teachers barely teach anymore. Mostly they just facilitate learning. And the system pulls the wool over the parents' eyes. Project work is a convenient excuse to waste time. Integration of the subjects is pointless if concepts are not established. If you want to connect building blocks, you'd better get building blocks first. Everything poor Dewey envisioned morphed into a disaster. Given all this, would he feel vindicated to see how leftist political indoctrination gave rise to student activism for all the good progressive causes that advance freedom and democracy? I think Dewey is spinning in his grave. I learned physics from the legendary Professor Haredi. His physics lab looked like a classic lecture theater. Flanked by two equipment rooms, the stage had a long counter on which he set up elaborate demonstrations and experiments. These were spectacular and unforgettable. His expertise in physics and his ability to teach it was second to none. He oohed and awed us. He had a passion for his beloved subject, and his love for it was contagious. He guided us step by step through a logically laid out hierarchical structure of knowledge. Every concept he introduced was based on observable things in real life. He was brilliant at making things compellingly obvious. He wanted things to make sense to us. He was a sage on the stage, but he wasn't a diva just to enjoy the limelight. He was a teaching monk on a mission. He wanted us to fall in love with the beauty and order of creation. And we did.